Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. I posted a video about God testing and the devil's temptation. So how these two have a different objective, a different agenda. God tests are in preparation for bigger things to come, our destinies. The devil comes to tempt us, to derail the plans of God. His objective, as John 10 says, is to steal, kill, and to destroy. So I've gone over two big people in Joseph, in Jesus. The stories that I said, there are countless of stories, and there were two more that I wanted to also bring. Actually, yeah, two more. So Moses is another one where you're going to see testing and in preparation for bigger things to come. So Moses, it opened my eyes to understand that God is speaking to us in many, many ways. So Moses was tested in many ways, but the way he was really tested was in the wilderness, in the middle of him doing his everyday tasks. So he was watching over the sheep, and he came across a burning bush. And the Bible says that burning bush was not, God did not speak to it right away. I would have thought, the burning bush, once it's lit, that God would just speak and grab his attention. No. It was Moses who turned around and saw the burning bush, and he approached it. That's when he realized this is something that's unique, because it's a bush that is not burning, but yet there's fire, it's inflamed, yet not burning. And so that is when God grabbed his attention, and that is where now God was able to speak to him about the plans that he had. And it was through that Moses received revelations about what was to come and what God's intent was in terms of freeing the people of Israel. And he became this big icon that we know now in the Bible because of his faithfulness to God and how he received word from God. And it was because he was paying attention to these details. Imagine if he had not turned to that burning bush. I'm pretty sure God would have given him the opportunity again to come across this, but you're never guaranteed that second opportunity. So it was good that Moses was paying attention to his environment, because God is speaking to us in many different aspects of our lives, whether we choose to hear him or not. Sometimes it's something he's speaking in our hearts. Sometimes it's something he's speaking in our line of vision, things that we're seeing through people. We have to be the ones to discern what is godly and what is not godly. But you have to know that God is speaking to us in things that you're observing in others, things that you're observing in nature. God is speaking to us. And we have to kind of pay attention to what he's trying to say. So I do apologize for the background noise if you heard the sirens. Sometimes it's usually a fire truck just driving to one of these buildings, so I do apologize for the noise. The second person, well, I'll continue actually with Moses, because there's more to Moses. It wasn't just the burning bush. There's the burning bush experience, and then there was also the stick, the rod of God. So Moses was tested in the sense that would he be able to handle what God had in mind for him. It wasn't anybody that could just hold that rod. He had a rod that was able to perform miracles through him, of course, through God. But this rod, we saw this rod, if you read the story of Moses, turned into a snake. And God tests Moses in this particular instance, because when that stick turned into a snake, it says Moses ran to hide. And I don't know about you, I have a thing, like a fear of snakes. So lately, whenever I go to the washroom, I used to hear these stories, these scary stories where people are like, they find a snake in their washroom. I'm like, no. I'm like, every time I'm in sleep mode, like during daytime, I'm not worried about it. But if it's like 2 a.m. in the morning and I'm walking in the dark to the washroom, I'm like, they better not be a snake in there. It always is at the back of my mind. But I'm like, there's really no fear of snakes, really, because we're in the city. What are the chances are that yours ends up with a snake? But be careful about the things that you fear the most, because that is what the devil will also tempt you with. But Moses was being tested with a snake, and we can tell he was fearful of snakes. I can't laugh because the way he ran, I think God would have found me in another town if I was the one who was in front of the snake. I would have been so far gone. You would have been like, Gloria, come back. But Moses was faithful enough to overcome his fear. So God asked him to pick this snake up by the tail. And he has the courage to overcome that fear. He takes that initiative, goes back, and he picks that snake up by the tail. And miraculously, this snake turns into a rod. Did Moses know it was going to turn into a rod? No, he was just being faithful and obedient to what God asked. And he picked up that snake. How amazing is that? That he was tested in preparation for what was to come. Now he knew how to listen and obey the voice of God. That when he would encounter situations like the Red Sea, he was able to maneuver it. When dealing with, he was pretty much the leader among the people. He was able to lead millions of people for 40 years, even though they stuck there in the wilderness. But he was able to successfully lead a nation for 40 years. Imagine what preparation will do. So God tests, and his testing is in preparation for the bigger things to come. That's one story. Another story I wanted to share is the story of Hannah. Hannah, if you read the story of Hannah, Hannah was a woman who was married. She was a second wife to a gentleman, and this other wife was able to have children and had multiple children for her husband. But unfortunately, Hannah did not have any children. So her husband, she was always praying and bringing that up. So every year they would go to the temple and pray and offer sacrifices to God. So they lived up in some high place in mountains, in a remote place where they had to come down to the temple every year and do this ritual and then go back. But this particular instance, she had always been praying and believing for God to bless her with a child. And it says that her womb was actually closed off. And it's funny, I feel God, this is something that we desire sometimes, something more, but God has a bigger picture in mind of why he withheld this from her. He really did. So Hannah had, her husband said these key words that I won't forget, and he said, am I not like more of a husband than 10 children? Like, am I not more for you? And I always feel like sometimes we desire something so bad in our lives. Let's say, you feel like you should be this, but God is saying, no, you need to kind of wait this out. Get through this test first so that I can bless you with more on the other side. But Hannah is a good example of what it's like to understand kind of the nature of God and why he tests us in this preparation phase for bigger things. So Hannah, it just left her in tears. Like, as much as her husband was sweet, loving, and kind, and as much as we know God is loving and is kind towards us, sometimes I feel like he's saying, am I not more than what you're desiring? That what that husband said to Hannah, am I not more than what you're desiring? So I feel Hannah changed her focus a little bit, and she now was focusing on God, and she went to the temple and just wept. And it said she wept not in a way that you could conceive it in your eyes and see it. She was weeping in her heart that if it was Elijah or Elisha, I forget, the prophet was able to pick up on that. He picked up on the fact that she was distraught in her spirit. She was like at the end of herself, is how I describe it. She came to the end of herself where she knew she could not do this on her own, that she needed God. And so she pled with God, and she said, God, if I will be willing to give this child back to you if you bless me with a child. It's just for me to have this child, but I will give him back to you. And God was saying, so you're actually asking me now for something that you want to bless me with, but it has to be something that is going to be glorifying me. Wow. God fulfills this dream and fulfills it. She gives birth to Samuel. Samuel, after a year, imagine the child that you had desired so much. You now have to give up that child in honor of the words that you, the vow that you made to God. And she did that. She was faithful to it. A year came when he was old enough to be, taken care of by somebody else. She was able to bring him. The Bible says she would bring clothes to him. It's not that she was a distant mother to him, but imagine how difficult that would be for something you desired most and you have to give that up. But that is true faithfulness. In everything that we receive from God, we have to be willing to give it back to him. It's to glorify him. And this was the test of Hannah, and that's the revelation I got from her story, is what we receive from God, we have to be willing to give that back to him. So if it's finances that he's blessed you with in abundance, you have to be willing to give that back to him. It's not saying, I'm going to give him 90% of what I make to, no. You still have to use wisdom, but it's something that you don't withhold. Like Abraham, when it came to Isaac, the seed that God had blessed him with, what was the test that he had? Would he go up that mountain and sacrifice his one and only son, the seed, the promised child? And Abraham was faithful to God. This is why that friendship, that covenant was sealed. Abraham was faithful to God despite what God asked him to do. Would we have done the same thing in his position? Give back to God what he gave us. And it's not in the sense, as we know, Abraham did not kill Isaac. Thankfully, no. God doesn't need you to kill anything. But God needs you to submit what he's given you to him. Glorify him. give him thanks for the things he's given us. So that is a story I learned from both. So for Moses, again, it's a test of preparation. Is you have to be paying attention to what God is speaking to you, what God is revealing to you in your environment, because at that opportune time you could have missed his calling. But that doesn't mean he won't try again, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that you'll get that opportunity again. And the other is one thing you desire the most, but when God gives it to you, you have to be willing to give it back. He's not going to give you something you can't give back to him. And that's what I'll leave it with for today. God bless you and keep you safe.